Hello, today's the 15th of December 2025. This is Hector Vladimir. Today I'd like to record on a topic called the barriers to living off the grid. And this was supposed to be an entire book or part of a book, but I will go ahead and condense it here in this recording since I don't believe there's enough material. There's not enough material in this topic for a section of a book, let alone a whole book. So I will be recording this on episode perhaps of Living Off the Grid, the podcast. So to begin, the barriers for living off the grid. They are many. There are at least several major ones that I would like to discuss today. And the first one that comes to mind is cost. Many people are not well off enough economically, financially, to afford getting off the grid, meaning getting disconnected from their utility and providing their own electricity, their own food, water, and telecommunications. So cost, I will tackle that first. Again, the economy varies with the years, with the decades, the area where you live, with the economy of your local area. Most people are very much dependent on the local economy, less so now than before, of course, with not only globalization but also the gig economy, where people are more often being employed and contracted by companies that are either nationwide, international companies, multinational companies. So more and more people are not depending on the local economy, but many do. I would believe in a certain given location, area, city, town, I would think most people depend on its local economy. So the businesses, corporations, manufacturing plants, power plants, any kind of large business in the area that employs a lot of people, they very much control and influence, at the very least, the economy of that local area. So if that local area has one major employer and that major employer happens to go bankrupt or leave the area, that local economy is going to be impacted significantly, and the population is going to also be impacted. So with that in mind, many people could be impacted economically, financially, to the point where they cannot afford their utilities, let alone affording to disconnect and provide all of their own services and products that they need, that they get usually from their utilities. And when I talk utilities, when I say that, I mean the provided services that are usually provided by either public services or private services, such as, again, water, food, electricity, telecommunications. And there could be a few more, such as gas in some areas, natural gas, or other type of gas is provided for energy in some areas as a utility, and perhaps other services, healthcare, perhaps housing. So what I advocate in the living off the grid lifestyle, if you have followed that at all, is very much the detachment, the disconnection of all of those major services from external, what I call external entities, or the grid. Why? Many reasons. Main among them is the abuse, both economically and socially, that those entities exert on people, and also in major part the economic disadvantage of being connected to those services. As you may, if you are a working adult here, especially in the Americas and the US, the cost of energy has risen to abusive levels, as has the cost of other types of services such as food, healthcare. Healthcare especially is abusive, and housing, and even water. Basic services such as water, life-giving resources such as food and water are abusively costly. So the cost is a major factor. Not everyone has the funds to purchase and maintain equipment to provide utility services. So that is a major barrier. So if you are one of those people that have difficulty even planning to disconnect from the grid because of your finances, that needs to be sorted or dealt with first. Of course, there are many ways to get out of debt and to improve your financial situation, to improve your economy. Of course, the first step is to be efficient. Be as efficient as possible with your economy, with your finances, meaning do whatever you do or get whatever you get for the least amount of money as possible. And if you do have an income, which I hope most people in a economy do, then try to maintain that income as long as possible and to even increase the amount of income that you do receive. I mean, it is natural for you to increase the amount of income as your experience and as skill level increases. That is only expected. And even without that, your economic situation should improve with time, which is very, very difficult to believe that someone would not increase their income level as time goes on, especially in a modern economy. So financial barriers are real and they are significant. So maintaining and increasing your income are ways to combat the financial barriers for getting off the grid. Also, you may want to know that living off the grid, or even planning and preparing for it, should increase your technical knowledge, technical skill, also your skill and knowledge in many areas such as electricity, electronics, hydraulics, even chemistry and economics, also finances. Also, it should increase your knowledge in management, in resource management especially. Also in technical skills such as, let's say, writing, planning for stuff, perhaps warehousing, organizing, which is part of warehousing, sorting things, make sure things are shelved correctly and inventoried correctly and efficiently. Those are all skills that you may use to produce income, to increase your income, or to maintain your income. Also, those planning or wanting to live off the grid also will look for training and education. Opportunities in those and advance in those will surely improve your income producing ability, your ability to maintain income and to increase your income. But let's say you live in an area with a very limited economy or very limited economic opportunities. Financial growth is very stagnant. What to do in that situation? There are a few things also that you can do. Ask for help, not only for help from your local, state, or federal government in the form of food aid or even financial aid because of your situation. Perhaps you have very low income, no employment is available in your area. You can get temporary or even longer term aid from public or governmental sources. There are many ways to apply and qualify. Also, there are organizations, charities, there are nonprofit organizations that either help you apply for aid or provide aid themselves for people that qualify, for people that are in financial or economic hardship, etc. If you are disabled and just cannot work or can only work in a very limited fashion, very limited way, then there is also a lot of help, either public from the government and from your local area, whether it be private or public. So look for those. If you are in need of funds or services, help paying for services. If you are an older individual, perhaps retired, there is aid for energy connection, for even food and other services such as basic services such as water, even for rent, etc. So look for those. There are many, especially here in the United States and perhaps in your area, your nation. Those aid programs may be available. Another solution for the problems with the economy of an area, the financial opportunities of an area, if they are very limited to non-existent, another option is just to move out of that area, move from that area to an area with better economic opportunities, better employment opportunities, or better opportunities for other economic financial endeavors such as business, such as contracting, etc. Finally, I do not recommend a few solutions that some people may have for financial distress, financial limited opportunities, economic limitations that may exist in your area. I do not recommend playing the lottery as a hope, as a wish of getting out of financial despair, financial limitations. That's just too remote of a possibility to even be considered as viable. You will likely spend more money than you will ever gain. It is best to invest money in other things, such as perhaps selling items, perhaps selling things at the local flea markets, for example, selling things in yard sales, even selling things on the streets in a safe area of your town as a street vendor, etc. Those are, I believe, better investments, even though they may be very difficult to gain any funds from, I believe they still are magnitudes superior than wasting your money on the very elusive lotteries and games that many areas, states provide for people. And those are, in many cases, addictive, or they are indeed addictive to many individuals. So I would recommend to highly stay away from those. Also, I do not recommend begging for money, asking for money, panhandling as they call it, loitering in the streets asking for money, begging people for money. It's just unsafe, for one. And also, it is not a productive way, I don't think, to gain any funds. Yes, people do get a little change here and there from some people, but it is by no means an efficient use of your time. You very well can make a lot more money working for the lowest, most petty job you can ever find. If you're disabled, you can find employment doing the things that you can do a lot and make a lot more money, and with a lot less risk and distress and exposure than if you were to just beg for money out there. If you are a person that is engaging in this, what I believe a very fruitless and just unnecessary exercise, I highly recommend to look for other ways, because I just don't believe it is productive for the price that you will be paying. Again, exposure, you're going to be risking life and limb out there with vehicles, with traffic, with other people, especially with law enforcement. You are putting yourself at risk, especially if you are a person of a certain persuasion that it is a lot more targeted out there in the streets from law enforcement especially, but also other people, and the traffic as well. The traffic is a major factor. Being close to vehicles, by passing vehicles, which most people on the streets, on the roads, outside are in vehicles. They are moving about in heavy, fast moving, with very limited visibility vehicles. So you have to consider that risk and how it is not at all, I believe, not at all worth the risk.
Also, living off the grid is cheaper. When disconnected from costly utility services, you save energy, time, and money in large amounts. The average monthly utility services total cost for families in the US is about $800 per month. Personally, by taking off grid measures and saving energy at my home, I have brought my energy utility bills from a yearly monthly average of about $175 down to about $80. And my overall energy use has dwindled at home and at work. And through living off grid efforts, I have been able to reduce debt to a bare minimum. That's in addition to my technical skill having doubled, as has my income, largely due to being involved in the now thriving renewable energy industry.
The next major barrier that I like to tackle for going off the grid, disconnecting from the utility grid, is knowledge, awareness. It is your education level, training, whatever you want to call it. Basically, know-how of not only the systems that will provide you with the utility services that you will be disconnecting from, but also the awareness that will give you the drive, the awareness and knowledge of the reasons that will give you the willpower, the instigation, the fire that will drive your sacrifices, which are going to be difficult and many. Your discomforts, your problems will be many, and you will need a lot of determination to solve those problems, move forward, and deal with the problems that you will be encountering. You need to have reasons, you need to have rationales, something to make what you're doing logical and rational. And also you need the skill level, knowledge, training, education to be able to deal with the problems, solve problems, tackle problems, and manage the problems that will arise. You will also need knowledge to develop techniques, methods, develop technologies, use technologies, come up with ideas on how to use technologies, how to arrange systems, how to install them, manage them, maintain them, use them, share them. You need knowledge for that as well. So your reasoning, your rationales are many. Again, the freedom, the financial freedom that you will be gaining, the physical freedom, the social freedom you will be gaining are reasons that could drive you to get off the grid. Also, the environment, I believe it's a prime driver, or at least it should be the global warming crises that we're in the middle of. According to many experts, most experts, or the overwhelming amount of climate scientists agree that we are in nothing short of a crisis, worldwide crisis, with temperatures rising seemingly every year, and the average temperatures of sea and air rising, and it is believed to be caused by human actions, human decisions, basically human pollution. So this knowledge, if you see the evidence, if you ever investigate the evidence that is very much available out there in different websites that are incredibly credible, with people that have dedicated their lives to the subjects that they are warning us about, to science, to many branches of science, many branches of studies. These people, which are thousands upon thousands of very knowledgeable, highly trained and educated and experienced people with very little political leanings, very little agendas, very little biases, because they are trained in science, which counteracts biases. This is something that many people don't know. The scientific method has built-in safeties or fail-safes to basically combat biases, counterbalance problems with biases, whether they would be political, social, racial, you name it. Science has ways, especially during peer review process, to counter any biases that the scientists may have. So these people, these experts, these specialists offer their studies, and it has been heavily reviewed by other people with many different backgrounds. And when these studies are approved, they are not only presented by that one scientist, they are presented by a very diverse and varied group, in many cases large groups of scientists. So they are extremely credible, these studies, and they overwhelmingly present to us and demonstrate that human actions, human activities are to blame for global warming. And living off the grid is among one of the most, if not the most powerful and significant way to reduce that harmful human activity, which is basically producing carbon dioxide and other harmful gases, pollutants that basically warm the atmosphere and subsequently warm the seas, which the seas are a sink for temperature, for heat, a heat sink, as are the major forests. And of course, we're cutting down very large parts of forests, and also we are polluting waterways, water bodies. We are polluting the air, therefore the seas. And by living off the grid and the many methods and ways that I recommend, and many other people recommend as well, those are either reduced, those polluting activities are either reduced, or in many cases completely stopped, completely omitted or eradicated. And that should be a huge, immense, tremendous driver or reason for people to want to be off the grid. So with that knowledge, and for that you have to read, you have to watch documentaries, you have to listen to people talk about it, especially experts. You have to look for that evidence, look for the studies. SR15 is one of those such studies. The IPCC SR15 study, look for that on the internet. It is freely available, a copy of it, and basically it is the scientific study, a very popular one among the many, that basically proves that human activities are to blame for the climate change that we've seen, and it does predict dire effects, dire consequences if we do not act, we do not decarbonize or roll back our polluting activities worldwide. And I see no better action or step that is more significant than reducing or stopping those activities, which are by and large the recommendations of the living off the grid lifestyle. Also, technical, scientific, and other types of knowledge is highly recommended and useful when living off the grid. That, of course, is going to need training, education. It's going to need time from you. It's going to need dedication. It's going to need commitment. It's going to need you to commit your resources, time resources, energy resources, your attention to those. Yes, it is a long-term process that could take months, years, even decades. It is a process that pretty much never completes, never ends. The learning process is a process that humans pretty much never stop doing. It may be more, of course, developed in a certain period of your life, perhaps during your younger years, childhood, young adulthood. You may develop it to a higher level or degree with higher education, advanced training, advanced technical training, etc. But it is something that is highly advantageous for anyone wanting to get off the grid for many, many reasons. Technical reasons are varied and diverse, many of them. You will need to learn how things work, how water flows, how electricity flows, how heat and energy and gases flow. You will need to learn about weather conditions, the climate. You will need to learn about home dynamics, meaning how things in the home work, whether it be lighting, ventilation, air conditioning, whether it be for cooling or heating. You can learn about the agriculture of food, the farming of food and animals, many, many different areas. You can learn all those areas little by little and become a jack of all trades, become a person that is knowledgeable in several fields. You can also become a specialist in one main field and perhaps not as specialized in others. It is up to you. It is up to your situation, your capability, your opportunities you may encounter, depending on your situation, your economic, physical situation, your health, etc., your age. All those are factors that may determine what areas you may educate yourself and train yourself in. But electricity, again, computers, mechanics, architecture, engineering are things that are extremely useful for many of the tasks of living off the grid. So knowledge and training in those is absolutely vital. And it is, or they are, things that many of us can pursue, whether on our own, whether in classroom, formal training, universities, technical schools, etc., or tutoring. Others may choose to self-learn through the mail, through books, through videos, through audio, through through a combination of mediums or modes. And again, the possibilities are many for education and training. And of course, as I said, you need to have the rationale, the drive to complete those training and education. Another way to combat the barrier of knowledge and know-how and dedication is by trial and error. You may try things that you may have a basic understanding of, and just by trial and error advance your knowledge, your understanding about the system, the concept, the technology, the situation, the method. You may develop your knowledge to a very high degree, in fact, using trial and error. Of course, you need to be very careful when learning by experience or trial and error, because many systems may carry some risk. In fact, a lot of them do, especially those dealing with electricity, dealing with heat, dealing with sources of fire, sources of very extreme levels of energy, whether it be mechanical, high levels of energy, mechanical energy, again, heat, energy, air or pressure, energy, spring-loaded energy. Mechanical devices carry some risk of hurting you, whether it be with pinch points, whether it be by moving parts. Maybe they are quite heavy, maybe they have sharp edges, and you need to be very careful with those. Have a lot of care, use your senses and use your judgment and attempt to prevent any kind of mishap, accident, any kind of dangerous situation before it even happens. And also wear protective equipment, protective gear, protective clothing, protective eyewear, head protection like helmets, hard hats, etc. Gloves for your hands, especially, extremely important. Make sure that you wear the correct type of glove if you're dealing with sharp objects, cut resistant gloves if you're dealing with hot objects, heat resistant gloves if you're dealing with chemicals. Make sure you have chemical resistant gloves. Again, face shields, eye protection, hearing protection from loud situations, environments. Protect your body and body parts at all times whenever there are dangerous equipment and situations. And most of all, avoid dangerous equipment and situations whenever it is possible. And make sure that you look for ways to avoid those really whenever it is possible. Not whenever it's inconvenient, not whenever it's easier, whenever possible. Avoid dangerous situations. For example, if you have to get up on a ladder and work on something from a ladder, think about the possibility of bringing the item down to ground level and working on it at ground level. It is many times possible, but many people omit it because it is easier in their mind, quicker, less inconvenient for them to just get on a ladder and work from the ladder. And this is many times a unnecessarily dangerous situation. Barriers such as knowledge could be sorted out by seeking training, educating yourself one way or another. There are many free options, many low-cost options, and there are also medium to high-cost options. You may choose a few of them, you may choose one of them, you may choose all of them. You may be able to pay for your training and education. There is a variety of methods out there. Again, conventional school, technical schools, training sessions, training tutorials, like they call them, labs, or whenever they are just short training sessions. They may happen in your neighborhood. There is a facility here that does training formally. I think it is kind of like school or college style, and it is open to veterans that are seeking retraining and training in jobs. And they are not free, but they are affordable. And there are many options for payment, many of which are completely covered by either the government through the military or veterans aid or other organizations. I've heard of many cases where people get fully trained in trades that are quite lucrative in that facility, and they have changed people's lives like that. So there are many options. Again, you just have to look for them, apply. Again, there are many options to fund them, to pay for them, and again, many organizations that will pay for them for you. If you apply, if you qualify, of course, you may again be able to pay for it yourself. They do make it easy a lot of times to make payments. They have low payment plans. I did go to a school, correspondence school, and the payments are quite affordable and low. We usually get it paid over about a year, 2 years maybe. $1,500, $1,600, $1,800 course you may be able to complete. I have completed 2 of them from that same school in that fashion, in that way. So it is a very good possibility that you can get trained that way. Another major barrier to getting off the grid, getting disconnected from your utilities, is your environments. By your environment, I mean your community, your social environments, your family, your city government, state government, federal government, community government, even your neighbors, people around you. Could be all barriers. Could be against, not all, but a lot of them, many of them, some of them could be against your plans, your actions with disconnecting from the grid. They may see it as harmful, as unusual, something undesired. They could see it as something that is just not welcome, not welcoming, not friendly, not common enough for them. They might see it as weird, as again uncommon and unusual, to where they could just naturally reject it. Maybe they have no reason to reject it, but they still do. No recognizable reason. They just naturally reject it. And they may have their own reasons, their own biases, their own discriminatory mentalities about it. They may just be rejectful to change, period. Anything different from what they believe is the norm, what they consider normal, any departure from it, they may just reject. And to begin with, your closest people, the closest people to you, maybe the ones that provide the first level barrier of resistance. Of course, they are the closest. They are going to be likely the ones that you will notice most, or first, or both. Loved ones, family members, spouses, partners, or just people that live with or close to you should be the ones that you first notice their rejection. If they do offer rejection, not all of them will. Of course, many people are on board with your off-grid efforts, endeavors, especially if they are aware of the reasoning behind them, of the causes of climate change, for example. If they are aware of the need for your actions, your energy-saving actions, your conservation efforts, or your efforts to get away from carbon-intensive lifestyles or habits, such as using gasoline, such as using energy from coal-powered plants. If they're aware of that, of course, their attitudes may be a lot different, maybe even welcoming to your actions to get off the grid. But that may not be the case in many cases. I would say most people just don't have the awareness, education, training, experience to accept your steps to live off the grid, your actions, your decisions. So they, in many cases, will be resistant and outright rejectful in many occasions. So be prepared for that. Solution for that would be, of course, awareness, sharing the awareness with them, telling them about the problems, issues, directing them to the evidence, to the studies, to the documentaries, to the books, to the videos, to the audio, whatever it may be, that it may be the best way for them to be educated, trained, made aware of these things. That may improve or even reverse their attitude against living off the grid and its lifestyle. They may even come on board and help you and be themselves advocates for your actions. They may join you in your efforts, help you out even, or they may not. They may remain with a negative attitude, negative or rejectful attitude toward your efforts. They may see where you're coming from. They may see more or less what you're doing and your reasoning, but they may not be completely on board. They may not completely understand, or they may not simply believe all of it, or perhaps any of the reasoning behind your actions. So you must be ready for this and perhaps face the challenge. Perhaps this may change your mind, may change your attitude, may change your level of the actions you take, may limit how far you take your actions, or it may not. It may be the case that you just change your environment. Perhaps if you live in a shared home with people that basically don't want anything to do with living off the grid, you may move out of that home. You may change the situation where you basically do your thing, do your changes, whether other people approve of it or not. There are many ways to deal with that, including, again, just changing your environment completely or leaving your environment and starting somewhere else. That is a very viable option in many cases. So it is up to you, up to each individual to make that decision, make adjustments, if any, or just abandon your efforts. That is also another possibility. Just abandon your efforts, let others do the work because you're just unable or unwilling to change your environment, which is also okay. Not everyone can do the many things recommended for an off-grid lifestyle. Another barrier that may affect very heavily your efforts to live off the grid is your local leadership, local governments. Your local government, usually in many areas of the world, especially industrialized areas, they're organized into towns and cities with local leaders, mayors, governors, etc. The local authorities, the authority having jurisdiction, your public utility management entity, whatever they call themselves, public utilities, usually ran by your district or municipality, usually a town, city, etc. So again, your city, your town, your county, in many areas here in the U.S. especially, are organized with government and with authority. That government usually has authority over the rules and regulations of your town, many of which apply to residences, people that live in that town, most of which, if not all. And you have to abide by those rules and regulations. Some of those rules and regulations are often, well, they all are interpreted. Some of them are written poorly and they are open to interpretation. Could be interpreted in several ways, or they could be a little room for interpretation, a lot of room in many cases. And depending on the government, the governor, the mayor, or the judges, however the people in charge interpret those laws and regulations is how they usually want you or expect you to behave, live, abide by, obey, whatever they want to call it. So those regulations, the ones that affect you the most are the ones that are for construction. Sometimes they're called construction codes, but also rules and regulations with the way you live, the way you use water, for example, the way you park your vehicle, the way you use your driveway or the surrounding areas around your home, the way your home looks even is dictated by some of these regulations. The conditions that you keep your home in or that the people in your home live, how they live, are also regulated. For example, having running water available, having sometimes energy and electricity available is a requirement in many areas. What you do is also mandated and dictated by many regulations in your municipality, such as whether or not you could collect and harvest rainwater. whether or not you can have farm animals, whether or not you can grow foods and plants in your land area if you have land area, whether or not you can hang your clothes outside or not, whether or not you can install certain equipment such as wind generators or wind turbines or even solar panels, what color your home could be painted, what color your roof may be, or what angle can your roof pitch be. I mean, many of these things are controlled, regulated, ruled by your what they call authority having jurisdiction. So you have to be familiar with that in the area where you live. Of course, some areas have a lot more rules than others. Downtown Chicago is going to have a lot more stricter and a lot more rules and regulations than if you lived in the backwoods of Tennessee. It's a huge difference. So you have to know your area and know the covenants of your community. There may be covenants, they may be rules dictated even by your, if you have one, homeowners association. So you have to watch for that. If you're going to move into an area, make sure that you know what authority, if any, has jurisdiction, what body or entity may dictate to you how you may live, what you may have, how you may conduct business, what business may you conduct, etc. So that is a huge barrier for living off the grid. Many communities, many municipalities don't accept people that, for example, collect rainwater, don't want you to have any kind of rainwater collecting system, tanks, collectors laid out on your roof, your yard, the side of your house, etc. Again, some communities don't want to see solar panels or wind turbines or animals or fruit trees being grown on your front yard, backyard, side yard, etc. And those, of course, are not conducive environments for living off the grid. So you have to decide whether you want to live in that area or not. If you really want to have all those things or some of those things, then you may not want to live in that area and look for friendlier, more welcoming areas with less or no regulations on those. If you have to, for some reason, live in that area for whatever other reasons, whether it's family, health reasons, situations with friends, family, children, etc., then you have to be a lot more crafty, a lot more creative in conducting that type of lifestyle, having systems that are inconspicuous, systems that are undetectable or a lot less detectable, and you may have to go around a few of those or all of those regulations. And there are many ways which I will describe in another chat. So just to continue with my conversation about the strategies to combat the barriers from your city government, AHJ, authority having jurisdiction, your municipality authorities, etc. First, you may want to keep everything as legal as possible, everything within regulation. You may want to keep your actions or constructions, your purchases within the requirements of each municipality, AHJ, or any other authority. For that, you have to read, you have to become aware of what those regulations are. A lot of cities, a lot of municipalities go by the National Fire Protection Association's publications, such as the National Electrical Code and others. So especially electrical installations. Not only that, but also other kinds of installations such as HVAC, heating, ventilation, air and cooling installations, gas installations, whether it's propane gas or natural gas, any kind of piping, tubing for that, any kind of tank that you may be installing. Those have strict requirements for the most part in most larger, medium to larger sized municipalities, probably not as much in smaller ones, but do become aware of those somehow. Look at tutorials, videos, look at books, again, publications, websites. There's a repertoire of places and information that you can visit, that you can review, read, become familiar, and even become quite knowledgeable in those. Also, construction codes from municipalities, city, state, government, AHJs. Make sure that you become familiar with those and also you follow those as much as possible. When that is not a possibility, when the laws and regulations are specifically built for you not to have your due freedom, constitutional freedom, human rights, when those violate those, then you have to get a bit crafty. You have to basically go around, interpret those to your advantage. Many times they have gray areas. Many times they are open to interpretation. So you can interpret them reasonably in a manner that you can still be off the grid, be off the utilities, be off the abusively high cost services. You may do that. You may need help from someone that knows about those laws and regulations, probably lawyer, probably you need to become quite familiar, even quite knowledgeable, even an expert in those, so you can do that, stretch those laws and regulations, become a bit creative and work around them. Highly do not recommend violating them. Before you do that, I would highly recommend you look for a better place. You can live off the grid, be off the grid, disconnected from the utility, and not be fined, not be cited by the authorities. And remember that neighbors, friends, and even family are the first line of basically snitching, basically telling on you, calling the authorities on you. So the first step to avoid any attention from the AHJ or any other authority is to basically prevent any kind of knowledge from those people that you may think may alert such authorities. Again, not necessarily because you're doing something legal, but also because maybe doing things that are quite uncommon, quite a departure from what is believed to be normal. So there is a balance to keep with that, with your actions, with the equipment you buy, the structures you build. Of course, you have to keep it reasonable. Don't put a very high mast with antennas and wind turbines in your neighborhood calling all kinds of attention to you. Try to keep any kind of solar energy equipment out of plain view when possible. Those are becoming a lot more accepted now in many neighborhoods. Some are still resistant to having those, especially on the visible side of the street for homes, whatever it may be, especially in communities where there exists a HOA, homeowners association. Be aware of that and try to avoid HOAs. That's the first recommendation. If you cannot avoid those for whatever reason, then you have to be a lot more inconspicuous. You have to be a lot more crafty and ingenious and creative with your installations, equipment, actions, etc. A lot of municipalities don't allow a lot of equipment, a lot of situations and actions and constructions such as farm work, farm equipment, farm animals, any kind of crop, any kind of agricultural activity going on. And especially in mid-sized to larger cities, some municipalities don't allow, for example, chickens or roosters and perhaps other kind of animals, larger animals, pigs, sheep, goats, horses, cows, and cattle. So you have to look at where you live, consider where you live, and act accordingly as much as possible. That's the primary way how you combat that barrier from your AHJ, city governments, municipality, etc. To solution barriers from friends and family, neighbors. Again, be inconspicuous. Don't call too much attention to yourself as much as you can. Try to educate them, try to train them, try to persuade them, try to enlighten them and train them. Basically educate them in the reasons why you are doing the things you're doing. They may not know why you're doing things. So give them a good set of reasons and don't do it just one time, do it a lot of times. Preach that to them. Basically evangelize them as much as you can. They will try to avoid you if you do this repeatedly. So if they try to avoid you, then that's exactly what you want. In many cases, most cases, when you're trying to have them not snoop on you, have them not spy on you, have them not bring up concerns that they have no concern bringing up. And you never know, you may convince them, you may educate them on your actions, the necessity of your actions, and also in the technologies and methods for living off the grid. They may come on board even and become a off-gridder themselves. You never know. There may be only a few people that understand and come to your side and may join you in your efforts, but you never know who and when may have some understanding, may have an open mind, may even join you in your efforts again. Some, of course, will utterly reject, will not understand, will never believe in the stuff that you're doing, in the efforts to live off the grid, in the reasons. So you leave those people alone, you leave those people be, and don't harass them. Of course, if they approach you, ask you questions, you answer them, and it is most of the time it will be them that initiate the rejection, meaning the avoidance of you. So you don't need to do a whole lot for them to start avoiding you. So that's one or a few ways how you solve the issues, barriers to living off the grid, to disconnecting from abusive utilities by friends and family and authorities having jurisdiction, AHJs. Other barriers that I'd like to discuss to getting disconnected from abusive utilities, costly utilities, the grid as I call it, or living off the grid. Other barriers to that I can think of include the lack of freedom, lack of rights, and this applies mainly to areas that are quite restrictive, nations, cities, some regions that are quite restrictive because of their history, their culture, political makeup, political turmoil that may be going on, social and political instability that may be going on. There may be conflict, there may be war, there may be major disagreements, major disruptions in public life and social life, and that may cause lack of options, lack of freedom, lack of rights, or abuses of rights. And you may not be able to do many things, including disconnecting from utilities, disconnecting the grid, growing your own food, harvesting your own water. You may not be able to produce your own energy. You may be looked at as something that is harmful for the community, etc. You may be forced to do certain things, to live a certain way. You may be considered unusual. You may be considered harmful, even heretic in some areas. You may be considered against the major or dominant religion of the area. There are many things, many situations, many predicaments may dictate your lack of freedom or how little freedom you may have. So that is a major barrier to many people around the world. And the solutions to that, of course, apart from being able to move away from such areas, just to do what you can. It could be something small, it could be something so inconspicuous that people hardly notice. It could be something done in such limited way that it causes no real concern from other people. You may live with very little rights and freedom and still have a small battery and a small solar panel and a small inverter that you can live connected with your cell phone, for example, your tablet, your modem and router, and a few lights. That may be all the electricity that you need to charge those items. A small 12-volt battery can do for that, and a small, perhaps 1,000-watt inverter, and the battery have to be about 100 amp hours maybe. And it could be a lead-acid flooded battery. It could be a gel-type lead-acid. It could be a much smaller and lighter lithium-ion or lithium phosphate battery. Again, the options are many. There are many panels that have no frame, that are flexible and a lot lighter and smaller. That could be 100 watts in power, which is quite enough to a 12-volt, 100 amp hour battery charged if you live in a sunny area. So just act accordingly. Of course, I would recommend highly to obey the laws and regulations and petition as much as you can for those repressive and oppressive laws to change as much as you can without putting yourself at risk. That would be my recommendation for those types of situations. Now we'll leave it at that. That's the main barriers that I can think of. There may be a few more that are not as large and strong as those. So if you think of any, let me know. Thank you very much for listening or watching. Have a great day. This is Hector Vladimir. Today is December the 16th, 2025.